Hello, all you lovely people. This is episode 238. Welcome back to Laravel News. The date today is June 4th, 2025. We're a couple days late, my friend. We're a couple days late, I think mostly due to me and my scheduling conflicts. I'm sorry.
Nah, I think it was me this time.
Was it? Oh, well, I mean, I think it was last week. It was me. We were supposed to be recording last week.
We were supposed to record
I
last
missed
week,
last
yeah.
week. Yeah, I was in
and
Virginia.
then this week I was like,
family.
let's do it. And then Laracon AU's launch was this week on the day that we're supposed to record. And Olivia had her first school transition visit on the same day. So it was just like all of these things stacked up. And I was like, I just don't have time to do it today.
Yep.
So this is going to be a very late recording. So normally we would record a few days before we release the episode, but today we are recording the episode the same day that we have to release the episode, and that means I need to record and edit this episode and get it out today. And the problem with that is that I've also got the Adelaide PHP meetup tonight, so I'm going to that. So it's going to be oh
my word, it's going to be a nonstop. Yep, it's gonna be.
I'll tell you what it's going to be. It's going to be a very minimal edit this week. So,
so folks don't expect a whole lot. You know what? Honestly, we were actually just talking about this. I would be curious to know if any of you folks have used the eye gaze correction. You know, where it sort of corrects your eyes if you're not looking at the webcam, or fixes that. So, yeah, we might. I don't know. We're not going to try that, and maybe in future episodes it'd be kind of cool because
maybe.
You know, we end up having to do a lot of reading while we're on the show. Anyway, my friend, I digress. CodeRabbit is the sponsor of this show. Thank you so much, CodeRabbit, for sponsoring. We're going to talk about them a little bit later in the show, but until then, let's talk about Laravel releases, shall we? We're all here to hear Laravel 12.14, including a new array from method, a currently resolving container method, and new accept context methods. Let's jump into the array from method. Sergei Danilicello contributed an array from method to get the underlying array of items from the given argument. So if you have a JSONable object or an arrayable object and you say array dodop or arr dodop from, it will decode those objects into an array, right? Or it will return the array via the toArray method. So it will take, a collection for that instance. So array from collection, array from a JSONable, array from an arrayable, and so that's what that will do. Pull request 55.7.15 for details on implementation. In some places you might use that. Volodya Kurdiskian contributed the accept and accept hidden methods to the context class to retrieve all values except for the specified keys. This was a Tim McDonald special, the context class. We've talked about this quite a few times on the show up until now, but there's a lot of methods that have existed, and now we have another one, accept. This is a class that continues to get added to as the community uses it and finds things that they need on there in addition. So accept says grab everything except these particular keys from the context. So there's the accept, and then since there's also context add hidden items, you can say accept hidden as well. That's a method on there in addition to the accept. Justin Silesia contributed a currently resolving method that returns the binding that the container is currently resolving. So if you've used a service provider maybe to bind something into the container using a string or using a class string, right? Whatever you might have registered into the container with, you can say container currently resolving, and it will tell you the binding that the container currently has. So that's handy. And that is it for 12.14. So good one there. You can, of course, see all of the changes in the show notes or can view them on GitHub yourself. All right, my friend, on to 12.16.
Next up, Laravel 12.16 added a new Fluent rule contains validation rule and in array keys validation rule and a new array has all method. First up, Steve Bauman contributed an in_array_keys validation rule that validates whether an array contains at least one of the specified keys. According to the pull request, the rule's purpose is to validate that an array has any of a given set of keys, as there's no built-in way to accomplish this without a custom rule. Next up, at Deva J. Morales contributed the ability to use a hidden context attribute by passing a second hidden Boolean argument. So this was added in Laravel 12.15, which allows you to inject a context value. So we have links to that in the show notes for you, but it allows you to interact with hidden context within the context attribute. Steve Bauman again contributed a contains method to the rule class, which complements the string contains version of the rule. So this is, over time we talk about usage of the framework, different features. As things get added and changed, we try and like streamline that and bring parity between all of the different. So once upon a time, all of our rules were strings and they were pipe separated, and then it was possible to pass an array of these things, and then the rule object came into being, and so then we've got this these named methods on the rule class. So the validation documentation has been updated with an example of you using the Fluent version of the rule contains method. Again, the last two were both contributed by Dev AJ Morales, I reckon. That is not Deva, at Dev AJ Morales, the same person from before. First up is the R class has all method.
That's never going to get old. This is never going to get old.
No, I've done it once and it's here forever. So we talked about the has all. So it will check to see if an array has all of the keys rather than one of the keys. And the other one, there is a stringable toURI method. So if you're using the string helper, whether that's the global helper or the string facade, you can now call toURI to return a URI instance of that string. So if you're manipulating data, you're trying to pull out values from different places using the Fluent string class, you can then eventually end up with a URI that you can pass to wherever you need to. So thanks to all of the contributors to Laravel 12.16.
Absolutely. 12.17, we're going to talk about a couple items here. Speaking of that URI, so URI is powered by the PHP League's URI library. So this was introduced all the way back in 11.35. We talked about it for the first time in December 19th of 2024. So what this does, just to give you some context real quick, is if you have a URI of a particular string, you can say with path, with query, with fragment, and you can add on some of those things like a Fluent chain, adding those on. You can also, however, grab off the different pieces from that URI. So URI arrow path, arrow scheme, arrow port, arrow host. So instead of having to parse that out yourself and do that, you can use that URI class. The reason I bring that up is because Ash Allen contributed a asURI model cast that casts values to and from an Illuminate support URI instance. So all of those things that we just talked about, if you're storing a URI in your database, you can now have Laravel cast that to a URI for you out of your database, so you can use all those fancy methods directly on that piece as you're pulling it out of your Eloquent models. Very cool there. Yitz Willroth, the code rabbi. This guy's been around forever. I remember meeting him for the very first time at Laracon Louisville. I think he spoke there, but he has made a contribution here which made the show notes. So thanks, Yitz contributed a give attribute that enables contextual dependencies using PHP 8 attributes. I'll do my very best here to describe this. So if you have a controller, and this is the example there was a way to do this previously, but you had to do it in a service provider. So it was sort of removed from where it was getting used. You had to know that it was being kind of done out in a service provider. What this does now is you can, in a controller or in some other place, they're just using controllers as the example here, probably in any of the places where it's Laravel is doing auto-resolving out of the container for you, you can use this new give attribute. So what you might do is in the constructor of a controller, you would type hint that you're going to be getting a user repository interface. So that is the abstract class that you're going to be getting as the interface. But what you can do is you can say for this particular controller, right above that, you can say pound, attribute, right? Give. And then inside of that give, you specify the concrete implementation of that abstract interface specifically for this location. So you can say, I'm going to type hint the user repository interface, but in this instance, I want to use the database user repository. Give that to me here when I'm asking for this. Similarly, if you in a different controller wanted to use that same user repository interface in another place, you could maybe say, give me the Redis user repository or something like that. Or, Okta user provider in this place, or the OAuth or the Auth0 provider or whatever, right? I'm making up examples here, but that's the idea, is that you can contextually bind those dependencies directly in line where those are going to be used. This, to me, seems very similar to previously, if you wanted to have an observer on a model, you either had to bind it in the service provider or you had to do this weird thing in the boot method. But now you can just do that at the very top of the controller. Very top of the model, you say observed by, and then you just give the observer, right? So it's right there in the class that you're calling. You know what's observing it. It's very similar here. In the space where you're type hinting that abstract interface, you now can say, here's the concrete implementation I want for this specific location. So really cool stuff. I'm not sure if that's borrowed from somewhere else, like if there's another framework that's doing that or something, but really neat. I love that. And it's much more clear to the future developer, future you, where that is happening and what's happening there. So love that one. Rahufla Akbar contributed a reorder descending method to the query builder, which is a shortcut to add a descending reorder clause to the query. So you can say, using reorder, you just say reorder column as descending, or you can just, in this case, some syntactic sugar, reorder descending and then pass the column, and that's it. Graham Campbell, also longtime community member, backported an assertion that was brought in 12.13. That's the assert redirect back. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. That's now available inside of Laravel 11, thanks to Graham Campbell. So for those of you still on 11, raise your hands. That's me. You can use assert redirect back now in your testing in the case that you want to update to the latest version of 11. Thank you, Graham Campbell. That's it for 12.17.
The Laravel team shipped some big improvements to Laravel Echo, which is a JavaScript library for real-time event broadcasting. First up, they have made some improvements to the installation experience of Laravel Echo. So when you run install broadcasting, the artisan command, you will now be prompted for the relevant credentials, which will also write the corresponding env variables and more. There is a new use echo hook for both React and Vue, and these hooks will make it simpler to start listening for events and automatically leave channels or disconnect when appropriate. So streamlining a lot of that process. I can't say that I have any idea how they worked before, but everything that I've seen about this to date has said that it's much better. So I will take people's word for it. There is also a new use echo model hook, which makes it easy to listen for model events, including with type safety. And you can now specify the shape of event payload data. So the support has also been added for allowing developers to specify the shape of their event payload data, providing better type safety and auto completion. So this is using the shorthand type name equals object syntax right above wherever you're using the use echo model, and then annotating that using the generic syntax in TypeScript if you're using that. So you can learn more about these improvements and get more information from the broadcasting documentation page. We will have links to that for you in the show notes. Thanks to Yannick, our research assistant here at Laravel News, for putting this one together for us.
This is a really good one, honestly. If you've not had occasion to use Echo before, it probably would seem like, I'm not exactly sure. But I know that specifically having to subscribe to and then disconnect from channels to make sure that you're not, absorbing all of the concurrent connections that you have available in your pusher, subscription that you have, was previously something you had to sort of do manually. And so this new use echo hook is pretty handy. So that's really nice. Thanks, team, for doing that. Let's talk news, shall we? On May 30th, our fearless leader, Mr. Eric Barnes, talked with Brent Roose, who is a big contributor not only to Laravel, but also just about all things PHP. He does a great job writing up, hey, here are the new things that are coming up in the new versions of PHP. I read a lot of his stuff. He's awesome. So Eric and Brent discuss the evolution of PHP, the importance of testing, and the introduction of Tempest, which is a brand new PHP framework. They also delve into the challenges of code highlighting and all the innovations that have emerged in the PHP community around that. They also talk about FrankenPHP, which FrankenPHP is basically like an Nginx replacement as far as I understand it to be. And so pretty cool stuff there. I know there's some really interesting developments on that front, so I'm going to have to listen in on this one and hear what's going on with that. But really, the title of this one is called Celebrating PHP's 30th Anniversary. And so they're talking about a lot of good stuff on there. Specifically, they're talking also about this PHPVerse event, which we've talked about previously on the show, but just as a quick reminder, JetBrains is hosting this. So this is commemorating 30 years of PHP. The date on it is June 17th. It is an online YouTube stream free of charge. And there's going to be talks from a lot of leaders in the PHP community, many of the names of which you would know, including Jeffrey Way. I have not heard from Jeffrey Way on any sort of things like this in quite some time. I see him on Twitter, watch him on Laracast, but have not seen him do one of these things for a while. So excited to see him on there. So lots of good stuff. Definitely check that out. Sign up and watch the YouTube video of Eric talking to Brent.
I love the 30 years of PHP. When I twigged earlier this year that PHP would be celebrating 30 years of its first public release, I went straight to our branding partners for Laracon AU and I said, I don't know what anything else is for this year, but we're doing something 90s themed. So we've gone full 90s for Laracon AU this year. And if you've seen the website, you will see it is very 90s. It's a bit of a mix, but I'm looking forward to bringing that to life over the coming months.
Very fun. That's awesome.
Happy birthday, PHP.
Happy birthday, PHP. That's right.
Filament is now running natively on mobile. This is Filament now running natively inside of an Android app thanks to the community. So the beautiful, powerful admin panel system built for Laravel, the one that you already use in the browser and love doing so, is running in a full-featured offline-first mobile application that is powered by Laravel, PHP, and compiled to run on device. This is not a future dream. It is here, it works, and it is one milestone down and many more to come for the native PHP team. So Shane Rosenthal, who is responsible for the Android port of the native P for mobile library, said that since launching native PHP for mobile, we've been blown away by the support from the Laravel community, and thousands of developers have showed up to say, yes, I want to build native mobile apps with the tools that I already know. And thanks to early backing, they have been able to make big bets and solve big problems. So they have launched Android support in May, following on the heels of the iOS support before that, which I think it was February. They announced that at Laracon EU. They have added hot reload so you can see changes live without rebuilding. They have begun work on over-the-air updates, build distribution, Zephyr, and more. And they have now crossed one of their biggest hurdles yet, which is supporting the internationalization extension, which Filament and other modern Laravel packages depend on. So Shane goes into more detail about how they went about making that work on Android and the trade-off of being a slightly bigger application bundle, but giving you a better experience overall, and a little bit more about what's next and how we as a community can keep making history together. So I'll leave links to all of that in the show notes for you to follow up. But they're making very good strides, and it's good to see that the community is backing that, financially and making it possible. And it's funding the development of native PHP. It's enabling things like running Filament on mobile applications, but native PHP are also very active in the community in terms of actually giving back. So the funding that they're making is going towards building the platform, but also to, they're sponsoring meetups and events. They're sponsoring Laracon AU. They're sponsoring Laracon US. So they're not just taking this money and sitting on it. They're actually being active members of the community, and we thank them for that as well.
Yeah, really good stuff. Really, really good stuff there. And it's surprising. I know we've talked about this before, but it's still mind-blowing to me that Laravel can run on a phone offline natively, compiled, running on the phone. It's insane. Yeah. So Android support is out. iOS support for Filament still coming, but that's really exciting stuff. So congrats to the team there. All right, we're going to jump into the packages section here. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the Laravel seeder generator. So database seeding typically is done with dummy data. We all know what a database seeder is. They're first-class citizens in Laravel now. When you generate a model, it's going to offer to generate a seeder for you. All great. It's going to use your database factories, your model factories, to help generate some of that, which is all great. All dummy data, totally fine. However, there are times when real data from a production database is necessary. Rarely, folks. Rarely. Please be careful. You do not want to get yourself in trouble. Have accidentally run into this before, right? You do not want to have production data leaking its way in unless you are being careful. So having said that, the Laravel seeder generator, created by Andre Rashman, is a package designed to assist in doing exactly that, generating Laravel seeder files using real data from your database. After having read through this, I'm still not exactly sure the process by which it's pulling data from production databases, but I'm going to read it through and then we're going to figure it out ourselves. We're going to figure it out together here. You're going to install the package, and then after installation, you can generate a seeder using the following commands. You're going to say artisan seed generate model mode, and then what models you want to specify that it should pull from. If you need to specify multiple models, you can separate them with a comma. You can specify what fields you want to pull, or I'm sorry, not what fields. You can basically specify like a where condition. So if I was pulling my user model, for example, I could say only pull those where the ID is greater than this, or where the user type is equal to this, right? So you can specify a where clause. You can also specify if you want to include specific records based on their ID. This option where you're saying IDs can only be used with a single model, by the way, which I think kind of goes without saying. You're not going to say like, give me the users and the comments and give me ID 1, 2, and 3. That's not how it works. So there are other options available like where in, where not in, et cetera, et cetera. In addition to model mode, you can also generate seeders based on tables by using a table mode. So you would specify a table, and then it would generate seeders based on that. Here's how I think this works. Maybe you're either hooking your local up to like production. Possibly, maybe you have like a read-only key or something like that you're hooking up to your database, and you're saying, read from my production database for this model and generate some seeders for me using this data. That's one option. The other option is maybe you're taking production data, you're pulling it down to your local database, and then using those local database records to generate seeders off of that. Possibly. I'm guessing those are my two guesses as to how this might work. So there you have it. I mean, that's what that's going to do is instead of you having to basically generate some, take some MySQL file, export it, and then load it in as raw SQL, and then make your seeder. I think this kind of shortcuts the process and does some of that for you, is my guess. Michael, any other thoughts on that? What do you think? Does that sound correct?
I mean, you can create like read-only credentials to a production database and
right.
Access it that way. To safety kind of thing,
right.
You're SSHing into the server and running or using Laravel Cloud to do it locally. But yeah, I get the theory behind it. I think Aaron Francis talked about this a little while ago with some stuff that he's doing to pull down data to obfuscate it, to like throw it into an S3 bucket so that he's got a companion command that he runs locally that will then go and pull that same data off that's already been scrubbed. So, I mean, ideally, you're not pulling real data when doing this from your production environment.
Right.
In a quote unquote compliant world, you would be doing all of the data munging in the production environment and then only offloading, scrubbed data, obfuscated data here. So, yeah, I don't know exactly. That's how I would hope it's working. That's how I'd certainly be running it if I was doing it. But it's certainly a useful thing, like, because you can create all of the dummy data and all the seed data in the world, but nothing will replicate the crazy things that users do of your applications in production. So sometimes you just need that data.
Yep, it's true.
All right. Laravel Passkeys is a package by Sparsky that makes it easy to set up passkey authentication in your Laravel application. Passkeys let you log in without needing to enter an email and password, and they allow you to generate passkeys via apps like 1Password, macOS passwords, or other apps that offer passkey support. At the time of writing, Laravel Passkeys works with Laravel Livewire, it does work with Laravel, but it can use the package's action classes and create a custom component using inertia with React or Vue. There are instructions on using inertia or further details. So this is really good. Passkeys are a way to use your biometric devices or biometric features on your devices. So, Touch ID or whatever, the Windows ID, equivalent. Yep. Yeah, or Face ID on your phone, or, all of those kinds of things that are available to you. And it just adds like another layer of security. So, you've got to access these things physically to be able to then do that, and the passkeys kind of just log you in and have all that data encoded in there. So it's all hand wavy magic to me, because I don't know exactly how it works. And fortunately, we've got Sparsky in the community to figure it all out and build it for us. So thanks to Freek and the team at Sparsky.
Yeah, huge plus on that one. That is, I think that is a quite difficult process to figure out. It's a dance that you gotta, make your way through. And so, like you said, thankful to that team for helping us manage some of those complex pieces. All right,
For sure.
moving on, my friends. Laratext. Laratext is a Laravel package by Eduardo Lazaro that makes managing and localizing text strings in your Laravel apps easier. Here is the bottom line. This will allow you to use OpenAI or Google Translate to roll through your translation files, like you have en, es, right? I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. I've done language translation, and we had like 15, but I never remember the language letters, the two letters. In any
Yeah.
case, what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to scan and update translation files using those services. That to me feels like the most valuable thing that this is offering. So you can put in your env key values for those translation services, then you PHP Artisan Laratext scan, write out for lang es, and the translator is OpenAI, enter, go. And it just rolls through them, translates it, gives you its best guess, and there you have it. It also does include a text helper function that can be used in your PHP code or your Blade directive, which I don't honestly know what the big benefit is over using Laravel's built-in __ method. But I think it has something to do with setting some translation key and default text in the case that it doesn't have it in the translation files, something like that. So some small deficiency that apparently they did not, either get approved to get pull requested into the framework, or they just wanted to include it in their package. In any case, that ships with a helper function as well as a Blade directive that you can use to get their new and improved take on that translation helper. So there you have it, my friends. Thanks so much, Yannick, for writing that one up.
Deployer is a free open source deployment tool written in PHP by Anton Medvedev. It helps you to easily deploy your PHP application to a server, and by automating common deployment tasks such as pulling code, running migrations, and clearing caches, Deployer reduces the risk of human error and ensures consistent, repeatable deployments across environments. It features the ability to configure your server, set up a firewall, install PHP in MySQL or Postgres, configure HTTPS, and so on and so forth. It supports zero downtime deployments with the ability to roll back to the previous release, and it provides ready-to-use recipes for most frameworks and applications, including a recipe for Laravel. So this is kind of not a self-hosted, but like a DIY version that kind of does what Forge does and Envoy. There are situations where you can't use third-party services, where compliance means you've got to manage all this stuff yourself. You can't expose your servers to the outside world, etc., etc. So having a tool like Deployer that you can run locally or within your own environments that are sanctioned by the blessed security people, Deployer may be something that you can check out for yourself. Thanks to Yannick for writing that up. We'll have links, of course, in the show notes.
Yeah, and before you can ever run a deployment script, one of the jobs that you and I are far too familiar with is dealing with code review, right? If you've ever spent hours reviewing Laravel service provider implementations or catching circular dependencies, or you want your code reviews to catch architectural issues before they become technical debt, then you should definitely check out our sponsor, which is CodeRabbit. So CodeRabbit is AI-powered code companion that will help you when you're doing these code reviews, because it deeply understands not only PHP, but the Laravel ecosystem, which will go beyond what traditional static analysis tools can catch. So here are some of the things that it provides. Automatic PR summaries and file change walkthroughs. It will run popular linters like PHP Stan, Biome, Rough, etc. It highlights code and configuration security issues directly in the pull request, and then it also enables you to write your own custom code review instructions and AST grep rules, so you can catch things that it doesn't have default in its default programming, but that are things that you want to catch. They're proud supporters of the PHP open source ecosystem. They're maintainers of projects like Pinkery and Cache, and their commitment to the open source community means that they help maintainers focus on innovation rather than all these repetitive code reviews that we have to do. So CodeRabbit is free for anyone who is interested in, for anybody who does open source work. Please check them out and help them get to the next level, if you will, right? We all know you got to make the money in order to be able to keep the sponsors happy. So CodeRabbit.ai, please go check them out. We would really appreciate it. Thanks for sponsoring the show.
The Laravel data package has many incredible features for working with data objects in Laravel applications. Data objects are a rich, typed, and highly configurable object that can double as API resources, form requests, TypeScript definitions, and more. One interesting thing that Paul, who's written this article, didn't realize but later discovered was the ability to use Laravel data objects for controller request validation. In fact, data objects have powerful validation that you can use in a variety of ways. So this has actually bit me in the past, where we had some very slight differences between our form requests and our our type definitions on our sparsy Laravel data objects. And when you use the magic from method of a sparsy Laravel data, or you inject it through a through the container resolution, it uses Laravel's built-in validates when resolved trait to then effectively replicate that functionality and then make to do its validation based on the type definition of the object. So rather than doing a form request and the data, you can just shove this all in there. It will figure out that you need to hydrate the DTO from the request based on some conventional stuff in the library itself, and then it will give you a validated object, or it will return a validation error. So Paul goes into a bit of extra detail talking about using it to validate a request and what that looks like, and how you can handle the responses and do all the stuff that you're familiar with Laravel's validation. But it also talks you through formatting of things. It talks about reformatting messages and so on and so forth. So definitely check this out if you're using the Laravel data package. It might help you kind of remove a layer of the onion from your request processing. So instead of doing, route to request to, to hydrate that data object yourself to then do whatever you need to do with it, take out the form request, hydrate the data object using dependency injection, and go from there. So check it out. We'll have links to it in the show notes.
Love it. All right, next up we've got ElasticLens, which is Eloquent-Powered Elasticsearch for Laravel. So this integrates Elasticsearch with your Eloquent models. It provides advanced search capabilities while maintaining Laravel's familiar syntax. So it works in tandem with the Laravel Elasticsearch package, which allows developers to perform full text searches, manage index migrations, and customize field mappings easily. Now you might be saying to yourself, isn't this just Scout? Doesn't this is the same thing as Scout, right? I just kind of hook up Elasticsearch, it pushes it into an index, and then I go, no, it's not. It's slightly different in the fact that typically when you're using something like Scout, you're going to be consuming that on the front end, right? So you're pushing to something like Melee Search, you're pushing to something like Algolia, something, like that. And then you're going to use, I know for us, we use Algolia's search components because they're just amazing, work great, and you get all that highlighting and all that goodness. That's wonderful, really cool stuff. However, ElasticLens introduces an index model that mirrors your base Eloquent model. So it automatically synchronizes with your database, ensuring changes are reflected. And then what you can do is you can do something like user dodop search and then a string. And what it will do is it will use the Elasticsearch cache to go grab from there the full text search, right? So it's not using your local database, it's using this cached Elasticsearch version to do these rather intense full text searches that would be in MySQL would take a bit longer. But you can do things like, hey, I want to via index search for this phrase, and then you can chain on things that you would normally do with Eloquent, like where the status is active. So you can really get amazing searchability, really fast results using this. Perfect example for when we wanted to use this, for example, is we wanted to be able to search across all of our different models for these phone numbers that we had. Tons and tons and tons of records inside this one database that we have, and pushing it up to something like Elasticcache or Melee Search and being able to search like this makes it multitudes faster than it would be if you were using MySQL, even with indexed columns. And so there's definitely instances where this is a super helpful approach. It takes these really complex queries and simplifies them quite a bit. So this goes through a little bit of the setup, and here's how here's zero configuration setup, Eloquent-like querying, custom field mapping, index migrations, model observers, CLI tools, etc. It's all included in there. Paul Redman wrote this one up, and thanks for doing so. It looks like a really nice tool here.
Pavilis Korop from Laravel Daily has introduced a new starter kit tailored for developers seeking a straightforward, blade-only foundation for their Laravel 12 applications. The kit emphasizes simplicity by offering a starter kit for projects where a lightweight setup is preferred. The main features is that it is using Blade and Alpine.js, using the Blade templating engine and complemented with Alpine, of course. There is an admin-inspired layout, basically inspired by Core UI's admin LTE package. It offers Blade components that can be easily customized and reused across the application, and provides features like authentication, login, registration, a dashboard page, and profile settings. You can get started using the Laravel new -- using flag, and then passing Laravel daily /starter-kit, and that will scaffold out your application using this new starter kit. So thanks to Pavilis putting that one together.
Very cool. Well, folks, if you haven't heard about Prism yet, you've been living under a rock. So our good friend TJ Miller is the one behind all this Prism magic. He recently spoke at PHP Tech in Chicago. He's going to be speaking at Laracon US this year about Prism. He's been putting in lots of time, lots of effort to make this amazing package, and he's releasing another piece which is called Prism Relay. So if you've also not heard about Model Context Protocol, MCP, that's something that a lot of people have been talking about recently. Let me do my very best to explain kind of the way that I think about it. So all these services that exist out there are writing documentation that allow large language models to know what functions are available to those large language models and how to call them and utilize them. So, for example, you could have something like Figma, right? So Figma is a graphics editing tool. What in the world could you possibly do with an LLM to talk with that? Well, there are a number of things that you can do, actually. Previously, the LLM had to kind of know how to go digest and figure out how to do that API. You had to create a one-off tool in order to go do that. That is no longer the case. The providers of these tools are now creating this MCP, Model Context Protocol, which is basically, hey, LLM, here's how you interact with us, and here's the best way to do it. So this is a protocol, an open protocol that standardizes how those applications talk to large language models. Prism Relay is another package now that provides seamless integration between Prism and MCP servers. So this enables or empowers your AI applications to use these external tools easily. So you can connect to multiple MCP servers. It has support for different transport mechanisms. You can either use HTTP or you can use STDIO, standard, I think that's standard
Input output.
In-out, right? Input output, yep. So for locally running MCP servers that communicate via standard I/O. And then there's also specific exception types for better error handling. There's a sample configuration file in here for how you would set up Relay, and then basic usage inside of Prism as well. So thanks, Yannick, for writing that one up, and thanks, TJ, for creating Prism Relay. Awesome stuff.
Last up, caching is essential for speeding up expensive data retrieval and processing in production applications, and Laravel provides several caching drivers to facilitate this. Two such drivers that come out of the box are the file and database cache drivers. Occasionally, it is a good idea to clear the cache, as regularly removing expired items can prevent storage overload, especially if you create many temporary items with random keys. In Laravel, you can clear the cache using cache flush or PHP artisan cache clear. However, when using these methods, all entries are removed from the cache, including the framework cache, which can potentially cause issues with file cache driver permissions if, for example, cache items are created by the www data user, but Bootstrap cache is owned by another user. Laravel Cache Evict is a package developed by Vincent Wong that helps you remove only the expired items in your cache in a memory efficient and, for database caches, non-blocking way. You can install the package using Composer, and you just call PHP artisan cache evict as an artisan command, and you can optionally specify specific cache items to clear, or specific, cache stores. So you can say PHP artisan cache evict file, and it will evict your file store, but only the expired items. So you can learn more about this package, including how to define your custom eviction strategies and view the source code on GitHub. There will be links, of course, to that in the show notes.
All right, folks, we've reached that time of the show where we've got some tutorials. We've got 11 of them. I'm going to run through the first 5 real quickly here. And these are one of those ones where if you need additional information or these sound interesting to you, you should definitely go check them out. They're rather code heavy, which is why we don't go into in-depth discussion of these, but they're definitely worth looking at if this is something that you're interested in. So first one up, customized URL handling with Laravel's Macroable URI class. We already spent a good amount of time at the top of the show talking about the URI class. We're not going to spend a bunch of time talking about it here, but it is a macroable class, which means you can add your own methods on here. And so we had a write-up here by Harris Raftopoulos, who basically makes some good suggestions for some macros that you might use on those if you'd be interested in making that a little bit more useful to yourself. Streamlining API resources with Laravel's Fluent methods. This is something we talked about in a few shows ago, which is this to-resource collection method that has now been added into the framework and makes it so that your API resources can be built a bit more fluently and a little bit more readable. So you should definitely check that one out if that's something you're using. Filtering model attributes with the new accept method. This is something we've talked about as well. Goes a little bit more in depth here. If you are retrieving something from a user, you can use accept to get everything except those, just as it sounds. Simplifying factory associations with Laravel's UseFactory attribute. So hasFactory is something that you have as an attribute on a model, but similar to how we were talking about previous in the show, those attributes where we say observed by, you can now use UseFactory as an attribute and then specify the factory name if you don't want it to auto guess what it is. And so you don't have to do that inside of a service provider. You can just do it directly on the model. Really good stuff there. Last one on my plate, transforming JSON into typed collections with an asCollection of. So this enhances your data handling capabilities by allowing you to transform JSON columns into a strongly typed collection of value objects automatically without having to do a map and then go ahead and map them into and return that. You can just do asCollection of, and it'll do all that work for you. All right, that's it for me, Michael. On to you.
All right. What do we say? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Validating URLs is where you're at.
Validate URLs effectively with Laravel's string isUrl method. What it says on the tin. Laravel simplifies URL validation with the introduction of the string isUrl method, offering developers a straightforward approach to verify URL validity. We can compare collection keys with Laravel's diffKeys method. This helps you to identify differences between collections based on their keys rather than the values. We have the ability to verify nested relations efficiently with Laravel's enhanced relationLoaded method. This addresses a long-standing inconsistency in relationship verification by enhancing the relationLoaded method to support dot notation for nested relationships, because, we assume all of these things work everywhere in the framework, and when they don't, it's one of those little bumps in the road, little paper cut, so it's nice to have that one fixed up. The containsOneItem collection method now supports parsing closures, which will improve collection validation by adding support, enabling developers to verify that exactly one item satisfies custom conditions rather than just checking the collection size. You can test job failures precisely with Laravel's assertFailedWith method. So this is to test that a specific exception was thrown. And lastly, simplify negative relation queries with Laravel's whereDoesntHaveRelation methods. So Laravel introduced new methods to streamline negative relation queries, making it easier to find records that lack specific relationships while maintaining clean and readable code. We'll have links to all of those for you in the show notes. Shout out to, once again, Harris Raftopoulos, who has put together all of these tutorials.
Awesome episode, folks. This is episode 238 of the Laravel News Podcast. Please check out show notes for this one at podcast.laravel-news.com/238. If you like the show, please rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be absolutely amazing. If you have any feedback for us, like to give us some comments or ask some questions, hit us up on X or on Blue Sky at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorinda, or at Laravel News. We'll be back, folks, in 2 weeks. Fingers crossed. And if you have not yet gotten your Laracon US tickets, please do so. We would love to see you there. Make sure you say hi. And until then, we'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.